Hello, and thank you so much for returning to listen to this third video in the 3-video sequence to introduce the listening campaign. The goal of the listening campaign is simple: to help you create breakthroughs in your life by using the breakthrough listening skills that we teach. In the first video, I focused on skills like the powerful paraphrase and listening anyway when you face listening blocks. Listening blocks are those distractions that come up when you're trying to listen, like anything else you want to do right now besides watching this video. In the first video, I offered you a list of 150 different types of things that can shut our listening down. You hear that listening block? That is my child who's about 8 weeks old. I don't want him to grow up in a country that's as divided and as ill-equipped to provide listening to the world that he's going to be living in. I also introduced Miko, the listening campaign mascot, who's proof that you can have big ears and not be a good listener. And we also have these really cool listening campaign buttons, which I'm going to get into later in this video. Of course, we can't have 150 different strategies to listen when all those different distractions come up. So instead, I introduced a simple golden rule of listening of what to do when listening is difficult. The golden rule of breakthrough listening is when you discover something that makes it hard to listen is listen anyway. Listen even though that person voted for this person or voted for that policy or voted against that. Listen even though you're frustrated with them or they're frustrated with you. Listen even though it's a little bit loud and hard to hear. Now, why would we be motivated to listen anyway in situations where listening's difficult? That really gets at the heart of why I'm committing to this listening campaign in spite of being so busy with other things in my life. When we push through listening, even when it's difficult, we can create new possibilities. We're able to fix problems, anticipate problems, fix relationships, avoid relationships from going bad. We can connect with customers and clients and constituents. We can literally be more creative because people know what they're talking about. They're avoiding miscommunication, they're avoiding conflict, and they're building the trust that's required for us to be working together in organizations or in the community. But the most important thing that was introduced in the first video was the definition of a particular type of listening called breakthrough listening. Breakthrough listening is what I call when we listen with the intent to leave the speakers feel fully heard and understood. In order for us to do breakthrough listening, we have to listen in a way that lets the speaker feel fully heard and understood. That means we need to speak. We can't just silently consume what they're saying, which is why I went on a rant in the second video about why I think talking sticks like this Stephen Covey talking stick are a problem. They actually keep you from saying what's required to leave the speaker feeling heard and understood. For example, you can't use clarifying questions and you can't use the powerful paraphrase. The powerful paraphrase, which is covered in more detail in that first video, is simple. So you feel blank about blank because blank? I explained that those blanks cover 3 different types of listening. It's the emotional therapeutic listening, it's the informational listening where you're trying to make sure you understand everything going on, but it also involves and it requires the critical and analytical listening, because when you paraphrase in that way, you're actually trying to signal to the speaker that you understand why they feel a certain way about the situation that they're talking about. And that's when we feel fully heard and understood. Finally, in the second video, I introduced a new meeting method that I designed called the Listening Café. I designed this method and I'm sharing it with you because I'm convinced that most of our meeting methods that are out there are overly focused on letting people take turns talking, which is different than letting people feel heard and understood. The Listening Café is very simple. You can get a group of 4 people together. One person holds the star or the talking object, and this means they're the star of the conversation. They get to share what they want. But instead of just passing the talking object before anybody else gets a chance to paraphrase and ask questions, everybody else does that. It's called the PQP process. The first person with the star shares what they want to say, and then the next person paraphrases what they said, asks them a question about what they said, and paraphrases what they said again. Then the other person, the second listener, does a paraphrase, asks a question, and paraphrases. And then the third person paraphrases, asks a question, and paraphrases again. That really allows the person with the talking object to be fully heard and understood before passing the star on to the next person that becomes the talker or the star of the conversation. And you can see how that process slows things down and lets everybody focus on taking turns feeling heard and understood, taking turns making each other feel heard and understood, rather than just take turns talking. Whew. Okay, that was a lot, I know, but that's why there were 2 other whole videos to get to this point. This video, I want to start talking about how can we as leaders go big with these ideas. How can we add listening beyond our one-on-one conversations, beyond a group of 4, to a group of 25 or more, or through our entire organization, or our community, or the entire country? That's what we're talking about today. I believe there's hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of people here in the United States that care about the disconnection and the polarization and the problem that we have in our country. We're divided and we are not listening to each other. In order to add listening where it's missing, we have to be proactive. So instead of only starting civil discourse initiatives and dialogue initiatives, we need a nationwide initiative that's focused specifically on bringing breakthrough listening into our communities. Now, that's going to happen one person at a time. I'm just me here in my house recording these videos. I don't have 1 million people on my mailing list or on my Facebook page. I have this video, I have these lights, I have this mic, but I have these listening campaign buttons. Of course, I also have lots of lessons from the research that I've been doing. I have an 8-week breakthrough listening class. I have an advanced listening Café class. I'm working on a miracle meetings class. I have a 10-step listening breakthrough blueprint. I've put together a class on how we launched the Orange Band initiative in campuses across the country. I also have a curriculum on how I brought together 200 and 300 people in the community around a big theme like sustainability. It's my belief that if we can get together the people that already believe in the power of listening and give them some of these skills and get us all together into like a Facebook group and give us all these listening campaign buttons and teach each other how to use the listening cafe, that we can create, let's say, 1,000 listening breakthroughs together. By listening breakthrough, I mean creating a new possibility that wasn't there before you intervened through an intentional breakthrough listening approach. Now, the way that we are intentional is going to be appropriate to who we are and what we're up to. If it's just you as an individual trying to create more listening, one thing you could do is get a button like this, and when someone asks you about it, say, hey, I'm just part of the listening campaign, and we're trying to create more listening around us, and I just want to hear what's important to you. Just that little opening could really open up some new possibilities for them and you, or you together, that wouldn't have been there otherwise. Maybe you're the manager or the supervisor or the owner of a business or a team or an organization, and you want to shift that organization's culture away from just talking at each other and at customers to listening to each other. That might mean you all enroll in the course together, like I did with a TV marketing agency, and 20 people were all in this course over a couple months, and they literally shifted their culture from speaking to listening. There are 2 really cool examples of where an organization used the listening cafe. In one example, the principal of a local elementary school wanted to have a meeting where the parents could come in before the school year started and get a chance to engage. It was important for her to signal to those stakeholders, to those parents, that her staff wanted to listen to them. So what we did is train the teachers in the listening cafe method, and they invited the community to come in, and the teachers convened a larger group of maybe 40 into multiple smaller listening cafes, and the teachers did the modeling of the PQP process. That allowed the school to broadcast, hey, we want to hear from you, and then actually have an event that did that rather than an event that just talked at them the whole time. Another example of where an organization wanted to show that they want to facilitate listening was a local radio station, a local NPR affiliate, wanted to have a discussion about a theme that they were covering for a week. They had done a series on immigration, and they wanted to have a way to allow their listeners to actually talk about what they heard on the radio. Of course, it's very important for a nonprofit radio station like that to make sure that they're nonpartisan, and they want to make sure that they are facilitating civil dialogue. So they advertise to their audience that if you want to talk about this theme, we are having a listening cafe at this restaurant in this city at this time. About 30 or 40 people showed up, and everybody split up into small groups and used the listening cafe process. The result of the school situation and the radio station using the listening cafe is that their organizations provided an experience that allowed people important to the organization to feel heard and understood. And that was a really unique, high quality relationship building experience that the organization provided to really critical stakeholders. Another way that you could use the listening cafe is to have a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting for a particular interest group, and you meet regularly at the same location, but you use the listening cafe process in order that people know that when they show up, they're not just going to be talked at. It's not just the loudest, most extroverted person that takes over the conversation, but that they know when they get there, they're going to be able to really be heard and understood. And of course, this can be used in political conversations. If you're part of a local political committee in your community, you could host a listening cafe for 20, 50, 100 people, have them show up, and make sure your members are trained in the listening cafe process so that they can provide the opportunity for people to feel heard and understood. Of course, if you are a candidate or you are an elected official, what a refreshing thing if you were to actually have a meeting that you were paraphrasing the people that were there so they know that you understand where they're coming from. That is never the only thing to do. Obviously, people want to see action, but you taking the time to register with somebody that you fully understand them when you're in a position of power, certainly when you're seeking to or currently in a role to represent their thoughts, is critical to make this thing we call democracy work. And it's an important way for you yourself to be heard when you want to share information with others. Now, after almost 3 full videos here, people are asking a couple questions. One is, how do you get involved? And 2 is, what's the catch? One person emailed me back and said, is my business plan just to share everything for free? No, but that is a big part of it. See, I'm really committed to getting this out there. It's not rocket science. So if you can find value with this or you want to share these videos with others, please do so. For those that do want to get involved, the first thing to do is get one of these listening campaign buttons. I'm going to make these effectively free with a small shipping and handling charge, and I'll mail you one. And you can put it on your jacket or wherever you want and use it to start not a talking conversation, but a listening conversation. Now, if you buy a button, I'm going to send you an invitation to a private, secret, exclusive listening campaign Button Brigade Facebook group. And in this Button Brigade Facebook group are going to be the others that you inspire to join or that I'm able to reach out to. And let's get into a conversation about how we can simply use the buttons and the listening cafe to create breakthroughs. And for those of you that want to try the Listening Cafe out, you can get the guide, which was available in the last video download. And if you want these specific supplies, I can send them to you, though you don't need the specific tools that I have here to convene a Listening Cafe. You can kind of use whatever you want as a talking object or a reminder of listening. So those are some easy and hopefully affordable ways to get involved and use this in your own life right away. Now, we know that knowledge is not all that's needed to make changes in our lives, let alone our organizations. To learn and incorporate new ideas and skills and techniques requires time, it requires training, it requires practice, it requires reflection, and it requires something a little bit more rigorous than a Facebook group. So, for those members of the Button Brigade, I will begin offering training. And I'm going to create opportunities for people to be trained in a variety of methods so that they can really be what I call a breakthrough listening leader. You won't just have 1 or 2 tools. You'll have a suite of tools available to you to match to different organizations, different goals, different situations. I'm going to call the people that enroll into that group the Listening Core. And I'll open up a Listening Core Academy very soon. The seats won't always be open. I'll only have times throughout the year that match with my schedule, given that I'm enrolled in a PhD program and working and all those other things. So over the next year, I will be opening short windows of time where people can enroll in the Listening Core Academy. This will be an online learning environment where we commit as individuals, but also as a group, to create listening breakthroughs together in our lives, in our communities, in our nonprofits, in our organizations, in our campaigns. You get to bring where you want to make a difference, where you want to break through into the class, and we're going to follow the Breakthrough Listening Blueprint, and we'll take a strategic approach to how to do that. So if you want to be part of the listening campaign, get a button, join the Button Brigade, join the Facebook group, start some listening where it's missing with your button, use the Listening Café, and then be on the lookout for the next window that opens to join the Listening Core Academy. If you got through these 3 videos, I want to thank you for listening to me, because I feel like I am heard and understood. It just took me 45 minutes of video to get it all out there. I hope to meet you in the Button Brigade Facebook group and look for other opportunities to connect moving forward. Thank you for listening, and thank you for the breakthroughs that you are creating with your listening.